Jason. I'll invite everyone else to have a seat as well. If anybody's just joined us, make sure your cell phones are off or silenced. Do we have everything worked out as far as the equipment for you, Mr. Harrison?
Your Honor, I believe it's ready to go.
All right, thank you. Whenever you are ready to proceed with opening remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When we were going through the process of selecting each of you, remember there were a lot of questions about if you could sort through the emotion and the tragedy of this event and focus on the facts. And we are not disputing that this was an incredibly sad, tragic event. 3 people died. And we know the difficulty of focusing on the facts when there's so much emotion involved in this. But I'm going to take you now through some of the things that you will find from testimony and videos of the events that led up to the shooting that are critical in determining whether or not Ammar Harris was acting in a reasonable belief that he was facing death or substantial bodily harm, or the other girls in his car, or if this was in fact murder, as the state has charged him with. Now, I'm going to take you through a timeline, and you'll find out from testimony that this is a timeline that was created by the detectives in viewing hours and hours and hours of videotape from lots of different locations. Mr. Stanton showed quite a bit of video from different angles, different areas, and the events and the time, or the timeline that we're going to go through now, most of it is going to focus on prior to the shooting, because that is how you're going to be able to determine the mindset of Ammar when he fired that shot. Now, since some of this, I didn't know what Mr. Stanton was going to go through, so some of this is going to be repetitive to the timeline that he went through. But about 11 o'clock, Ammar goes over to the Aria and reserves a table at the Hayes nightclub. He goes back home and comes back later with his girlfriend, Yenesis or Yeni. They arrive about 1:30. At 1:37, you'll see his group entering the Hayes nightclub. At 3:33 is the first time we're going to see Mr. Cherry's Maserati arrive in the area valet. 3 minutes later, you'll see Mr. Cherry and Mr. Walters, he was the passenger in the Maserati. They go down the escalator into the Hayes lobby, but they don't go into the Hayes nightclub. About 7 minutes later, you're going to see Mr. Cherry get on the escalator heading up from the Hayes lobby. 3:45, they return to their Maserati in the valet area. At 3:51, the Maserati departs the valet area and drives off. One of the things you'll hear from the security officer, and you saw pictures of him, a very large gentleman, and you'll see that Ammar is walking with him much of the evening before he departs from the Aria. So 3:51, Ammar and the security officer leave the Hayes nightclub. At 3:52 on the video, you'll see the Maserati coming back again into the valet area. 3:54, Ed Greer, that's the security officer. So the security officer, Ammar, Yeni, and Keller is one of the young ladies, exit the north lobby doors of the Aria into the valet area. At the same time, the Maserati again leaves the valet. 3 minutes later, they come back. Mr. Cherry and Mr. Walters, they get out of the Maserati. Ammar walks past the two of them, and then Cherry and Walters return to the Maserati. 3:57. This is when they've already left the area and they're walking into the valet area. Again, 3:58, Maserati leaves the valet area. And it comes back a minute later, back to the valet area. That same time, 3:59, there's an altercation between a large black man and another black male. Now, I will submit to you that when Mr. Stanton said that that was Ammar that was in the scuffle where the guy wearing the red pants and there's a big guy in a white shirt, I'll submit to you the evidence will show that that was not Ammar. There was a second young man who was wearing red pants who was actually in that scuffle. That wasn't Ammar. You will hear evidence that Ammar had been in a verbal altercation with an individual shortly after they left the Hayes nightclub. But the big scene where you see them out in the driveway there of the valet, that is not Ammar Harris. 3:59, Mr. Chair, Mr. Walters get out of the Maserati. The security officer and Ammar walk back toward the north lobby area. And this is important. You're going to learn that when Ammar got out to the valet area, he was about to get into his vehicle, he realizes he doesn't have his jacket, and he thinks that he's left his jacket in the nightclub. And he and Mr. Greer head back into the nightclub to look for his jacket. Mr. Cherry follows in and goes into the north lobby doors from the valet area, shortly behind Ammar. 2 minutes later, Mr. Chair and Mr. Walters exit the doors from the aria and wait out in the valet area. .402 on the time stamp of the video, you'll see Mr. Cherry and Mr. Walters. They're standing in the area for a short time, and then they go back in to the casino where Ammar had gone into. Two minutes later, they come back out. 3 minutes later, there's a major altercation at some point, and you'll hear from a number of witnesses that a male gets out a gun and appears to point it towards the crowd. There's quite an event going on at this point. That same minute, Yenny, who had been waiting in the Range Rover for Ammar to go get his jacket, sees what's going on, sees somebody has retrieved a handgun, and she gets out of the car and goes into the aria to tell Ammar that somebody is out there with a gun. 1 minute later, you'll see that Mr. Cherry meets with the man who has the gun. They were standing next to the Maserati, and they shook hands. A minute later, Yenny is coming back out from the aria. A minute later, Ammar comes out. Ammar returns to the Range Rover. You're going to hear testimony that Ammar does ask Yenny to retrieve an unloaded handgun that was in the glove compartment of his Range Rover. She does that. The handgun, he loads the handgun. He doesn't take it. He leaves it with her and tells her something to the effect that if somebody starts shooting, don't be afraid to shoot back. And he leaves the gun with her for her security. And then you're going to see him walk over, and he's going to be by the Maserati, and there's not audio to this, but you'll see him interacting with individuals there. And you will hear testimony that he is trying to make sure everything is cool, that he's heard someone's had a gun, and he's trying to make sure that everything's okay with everyone. 4:13, Mr. Cherry and Mr. Walters then leave in the Maserati for the last time. A few minutes later, Ammar goes to the Range Rover and gets into it. And he leaves 1 minute later. (4:17), that is when you saw from the video that Ammar comes down on the side of the vehicles that are stopped for the light, and he gets in front of the vehicles to make that left-hand turn, and he leaves at a pretty high rate of speed, and you'll see that Maserati accelerates quickly and comes after him. Then they come to that light where they're both stopped there. One of the things that you'll notice when you pay close attention to the video is that when they're at that light, Ammar's vehicle, when it's red, is kind of lurching forward like he's trying to get a jump on the light and be able to accelerate as soon as it turns green. And as soon as it does, both vehicles accelerate at a high rate of speed. You'll remember that Mr. Ammar's blinker to the right had been on. He had been trying to change lanes, and at one point you see him trying to get over into the center lane. And you'll hear testimony from a number of people that there was a short conversation between Ammar and Mr. Cherry at that light. And I've jumped ahead of myself a little bit on this. So it's at 4:18 that you see when I talked about Ammar's vehicle appearing to try to get a jump on the light. And then at 4:19, you do hear one shot. And Ammar continuing at a high rate of speed, what appears to him trying to get out of there. And that's when the Maserati continues to accelerate and comes up and passes his vehicle on the left, on the driver's side of Ammar's vehicle. And you hear some additional shots being fired. And that is where the tragic collision takes place that same minute at the intersection of Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. You're going to learn some important things for you to be able to focus on the mindset that Ammar had. You've heard the indictment that was read to you that charges of first-degree murder with the elements of intentional and deliberate and felonious acts. You're going to learn that 2 months before this incident, Ammar had been shot in Florida and had been hospitalized from that shooting. Obviously, you know that Ammar had been told that there was a gun that had been pulled out in the fighting that had gone on just prior to this, and that he had Ginny get out a handgun for protection. And again, he didn't take that handgun with him when he went to interact with people. He left it there with her for her protection. You're going to hear from Dr. Norton Reutman, who is a psychiatrist, and he is going to testify regarding how the mind and the body reacts under incredibly stressful situations. And that information is going to be critical in analyzing whether or not Ammar had the mental intent to commit murder that night. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to get underway bringing in witnesses. We would ask you to carefully analyze the details of each of the witnesses. You'll find that there are some that as defense attorneys we probably won't even ask any questions of them because there's a lot of information in this event that is not in dispute. Much of this was captured on video, and you'll be able to obviously observe that. In closing, this is an incredibly sad tragedy. But after you hear and analyze all of the evidence, you will know that this was not murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregson.